Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, but then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. Well, folks, we have arrived at October 20th, which is the day that Senators Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker have asked the Attorney General Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice to provide a response as to whether or not they plan to start the descheduling and decriminalization process. And from my understanding, there is no written response yet. It could come later today. However, it's worth noting that I did share in my video on Sunday that Tom Angle from Marijuana Moment on Friday did report that the Attorney General Merrick Garland is expected to appear in front of the House Judiciary tomorrow on Thursday at 10 a.m. So that is a big deal, as he could make an announcement then, especially considering the fact that the House Judiciary Committee did recently just pass the MORE Act. And so it feels like Christmas Eve to me, at least. With that said, I did want to highlight some of these tweets from Vinny at MSO Elevator, who highlighted some important facts worth considering and remembering as we anticipate the response later today or tomorrow from Merrick Garland. So he highlighted Psaki reiterated in April that POTUS supports decriminalizing. Now, I know that the POTUS himself doesn't, but the team that he stands for likely does, and that's something that they ran on, so they have to keep their promise, especially to make the people happy and to get the votes again in 2022. While this I've obviously just highlighted, but more importantly, I wanted to share that the NDAA has until December 10th to pass. So we have December 10th as a deadline. The NDAA has to pass by December 10th, and either SAFE is going to be in there or it's not. And obviously, I think Merrick Garland's response today or tomorrow is going to have a big impact whether or not SAFE stays in that bill. So I wanted to share that. Now, if you wanted to read this too, this is just from what Psaki said, just highlighting that he's for decriminalizing. This was another snippet, but he did say that he wants to reschedule cannabis as a Schedule 2. And I think I'm well aware, especially from a CEO, MSOs, and even Chuck Schumer highlighting that we cannot put cannabis in Schedule 2. We want to deschedule it completely, especially for the benefit of the industry in the long run. And so nonetheless, these are things that we already know, but I did want to share this one, as I think this is very important to know that December 10th is a very important deadline that we have to look forward to. And then another one from Vinny, just to highlight, on March 17, 2021, Lisa Monaco, the Deputy Attorney General, had this to say about the DOJ decriminalizing cannabis. Response: I share Attorney General Garland's view that it is important to focus our attention on violent crimes and other crimes that greatly endanger our society, and that prosecutions for simple cannabis possessions are not an effective use of limited resources. I also share Attorney General Garland's view that we have seen disparate treatment in these prosecutions that has had a harmful impact on people and communities of color, including stymied employment opportunities and social and economic instability. So considering that the Deputy Attorney General shares the current Attorney General's views, it's worth highlighting. Plus, Vinity Gupta, Associate Attorney General, all the way back in 2012, advocated decriminalizing all drugs. Years later in 2021, she denied saying this while being confirmed under Biden, so that point remains. That's unfortunate. However, lastly, we have here Attorney General Merrick Garland in February 2021 believes cannabis criminalization is wrong and a racist law that should not exist. He believes the prohibition of cannabis destroys lives and the DOJ should stop focusing on violent crimes. And when we have all three of the highest members of the Department of Justice who believe cannabis should be decriminalized, Booker has a history with Garland on this issue as well in the past. So will the DOJ go against the White House and make a provocative move? Or will they stand with the Democratic Party, which will likely appeal more to the voters in America, and do the right thing that they campaigned on doing? Ultimately, we just have to wait. But I did want to highlight this because it shows that the views of the individuals within the Department of Justice are more in line with the wider Democratic Party and that of the voters, apparently, than the strict, outdated views that Biden holds. So it's going to be interesting. But again, this is the best way that we can see the Dems getting social equity, starting this process, while also keeping SAFE in the Senate version of the NDAA. But on to some great news out of states. Arizona has sold more cannabis in 2021 than Colorado. Say what? Arizona started adult use sales in January 2021, and medical sales have been legal in the state since 2012. A new report by Headset provides an overview of the Arizona cannabis market, exploring various sales trends, including month-over-month growth, cannabis category trends, and some pricing insights, which helps deliver some insights we weren't expecting, as apparently Arizona has made a total of $1.6 billion in cannabis sales, medical and adult use combined, between January and September 2021, which is more sales than Colorado. However, it's worth noting that when we take a look at this graph, the asterisk here says includes medical sales. So if we were to actually exclude medical sales from Arizona, they would not surpass Colorado. I don't think, actually, maybe they would. I don't know. However, it's just worth noting that Arizona here, we say medical and recreational, but Colorado does not have the asterisk. So I don't know if we erased medical completely, whether or not it would put them behind Colorado. I just thought of that now and wanted to share that. But nonetheless, it's impressive considering we look at the entire standings of the U.S. from January to September 2021. Colorado's in the lead by far. Then Arizona sneaks in second place with Colorado, or followed by Colorado, Michigan, Illinois, Washington, Massachusetts, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Maryland. So nonetheless, very impressive. You can see the breakdown here if you wanted to look more into it, but some key takeaways just to highlight: sales in Arizona continue to show strong growth year over year, growing 110% year over year in September. So if you wanted to pause to read a little bit more, you can do that. But on top of this, Arizona's social equity cannabis program takes shape. As the state clearly already sees the benefits of legalization, they're now taking action towards ensuring social equity in the state's cannabis industry. So let's see how they're going about that. The Arizona Daily Star reported that the state's Department of Health Services issued the final draft of its report on the social equity ownership program last Thursday. According to the Daily Star, the major changes issued by the department include clearing up language around the transferability of social equity license by barring applicants from entering into prior agreements with larger retailers to sell or take over in an applicant's license. The Department of Health Services also voted to lower the initial application fee to $4,000 from $5,000, so not a huge decrease, but 20% is better than none. While the social equity program is intended to promote the ownership and operation of licensed cannabis establishments by individuals from communities disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of previous cannabis laws, according to the state's Department of Health Services. So not sure if this is really going to help that so much, but it's worth a shot, and as many states are trying different things and experimenting with social equity, obviously just in time we're going to see which ones did better and which ones did worse. But hopefully this can help social equity entrepreneurs in Arizona get a head start. On to this from Todd Harrison. Thank you, Todd Harrison, for sharing this one, as New York regulators will consider medical cannabis program rules on Thursday, as the New York State Cannabis Control Board will hold a public meeting of the board at 1 p.m. tomorrow. So it's worth noting, though, that the last time these regulators met, I do believe that they okayed flower into the medical program, which wasn't allowed for a long time, which will do a few good things. It'll help bring down the price of overall cannabis, because obviously when you can get flower for cheaper, a lot of sales go that way. But once they, fully establish this into the medical program, we should expect flower sales to ramp up. So this is great out of New York. On top of this is unprecedented. New York employers can't drug test most workers for cannabis, the state announces. And this is huge. So we're going to go through this. New York employers are no longer allowed to drug test most workers for cannabis. The State Department of Labor announced new guidance. While many legal cannabis states have made it so workers can't be penalized for testing positive, New York appears to be the first state to explicitly bar employees from testing for THC at all, with limited exceptions for certain categories for workers, which is brilliant, because do you test your employees for alcohol every morning? No. If you did, you'd probably be shaming them just as well as, society currently shames cannabis users. But regardless, this is just why this is very important. Employers can still punish people for being actively impaired on the job, much like alcohol, so that's totally fair, but the new rules create a high threshold for proving impairment, going so far as to say that odor of cannabis is not enough on its own to be used as evidence. The legalization bill that former Governor Andrew Cuomo signed in March broadly prohibits discrimination against employees who use cannabis while off duty, with some exceptions, such as those who are regulated by the Federal Department of Transportation. But in essence, New York's Department of Labor said in an FAQ published earlier this month that drug testing requirements for cannabis constitute discrimination. Can an employer test for cannabis? No, unless the employer is permitted to do so pursuant to the provisions of Labor Law Section 201, D4A, and other applicable laws. Can an employer drug test an employee if federal laws allows for drug testing? No, an employer cannot test an employee for cannabis merely because it is allowed or not prohibited under federal law. So prior to the passage of state legalization, New York City officials had established a local ban on pre-employment drug testing for cannabis, but Faye Caldwell, an attorney and advisor who specializes in drug testing laws, said in a video that DOL's new rules on the issue represent a seismic policy change. I would say this is very big, considering this is New York, a state with a lot of influence, just saying, yeah, we're not going to test you for cannabis whatsoever, much like alcohol. And this is a huge victory because it helps get rid of the double standard and stigma around cannabis that has been alive for far too long. On to South Dakota as lawmakers advance cannabis legalization bill as activists pursue the 2022 ballot initiative. South Dakota lawmakers on Tuesday advanced legislation to legalize cannabis for adult use and replace the state's newly established medical cannabis program. In an 8-2 vote, a subcommittee tasked with exploring adult use legalization recommended approving a draft bill that's been carried by Chairman Hugh Bartels. Now, it's interesting is that this is going on while the Supreme Court continues to contemplate a review of constitutionality of an earlier cannabis legalization initiative that voters approved in 2020, but which was later challenged by a lawsuit funded by taxpayer dollars by the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, saying, no, I know better than the citizens of South Dakota, which to me is just insane. So at the same time, activists have launched a signature gathering drive to put cannabis on the 2022 ballot just to be safe. However, the main conclusion of this is that after the next few steps, because this bill still has a lot of steps to go through, after that point, the measure would be introduced for formal action in the 2022 session. So whether or not South Dakotaans get legalization on the ballot for 2022, this bill doesn't really have a shot until the 2022 session anyways, but nonetheless, good job South Dakota lawmakers. On to this news from Trulieve as they celebrate opening their 100th Florida dispensary in hometown of Tallahassee. And so they have announced the opening of their 100th dispensary, a store that was formerly branded as Harvest House of Cannabis. Especially when you consider the negative sentiment that was thrown Kim Rivers' way the last few months, doesn't faze her, as she invites the Tallahassee community to join the celebrations of the 100th Florida dispensary opening with all-day deals, music, free swag, and brand partner giveaways. That is how you retain medical customers. All registered patients from those new to Trulieve and dedicated Trulievers will receive 25% off total purchases as well as free edible product with orders over $100 at the new Tallahassee dispensary on opening day. So great job, Trulieve, as you continue to execute. But again, I'm happy to be invested in these companies that are changing the status quo for the better. On to Arkansas as medical cannabis sales near 50 million and more than 60,000 pounds of cannabis sold. So reports from the Department of Finance and Administration show that medical cannabis sales in Arkansas are continuing to grow. Yeah, no duh. According to the DFA, Arkansas patients have spent $428 million to obtain more than 60,000 pounds of medical cannabis since the state's first dispensary opened in 2019. The state is close to reaching $50 million in tax collections. The two state taxes applied to medical cannabis have generated $49.6 million being generated since mid-2019, and more than half of that amount was collected since January 1st, 2021. And there are currently just 37 dispensaries. If there's a lot more, you'd have a lot more sales in operation throughout Arkansas, and according to the Arkansas Department of Health, 78,425 active patient cards have been administered. So great job, Arkansas, for providing a safe alternative to addictive opioids. On to some marijuana moment stories as Americans want to live where cannabis is legal, real estate survey finds. It's no surprise either because this increases the property values too. Americans would rather live in states where cannabis is legal than in those that continue to criminalize cannabis consumers. That's according to a new survey published on Monday by real estate company Redfin. Among those who recently moved to a new metro area, 46% said they prefer to reside somewhere where cannabis is fully legal, compared to just 22% who want to live in a place with prohibition still in effect. The share of those who like legalized jurisdictions includes more than 1 in 10 respondents, 12%, who say they would only consider living in a place where cannabis can be legally purchased. On the other side, 10% said they would rule out moving to areas that have ended criminalization, while 32% of people taking the survey said that they did not care about the cannabis issue when it comes to where they live. So we can see the visual here quite clearly. The survey, which involved 1,023 U.S. residents who moved to a new home during the 18 months prior to answering the question in August, also asked about other issues such as abortion policy, voting rights, and anti-discrimination laws for gender and social orientation. But as we can see, 10% would not like to live in a place like this, or 12% I prefer not to live in a place like this, and these are likely 22% of people that have never lived in a place with cannabis. And then we move over to I prefer to live in a place like this, 34%. I will only live in a place like this, 12%, and that's where I would fall in now, given my experience. And while 32% don't care about the issue. And I just wanted to use this to highlight that there's likely a silent majority out there that have never been positively or negatively affected by cannabis, and they simply just don't care, but they want to respect adults' freedom of choice to consume what they want to consume in their own time as adults. So worth sharing this though, as this is in line with the fact that property values do go up in places that legalize for cannabis. But this is a crazy story highlighting the double standards that we're close to getting rid of, but still exist as Bank of America cancels the account of Cannabis and Psychedelics Research Institute registered with the DEA. As the second largest bank in the U.S. is shutting down the account of a research institute that's federally authorized to cultivate and study Schedule I substances like cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms. Bank of America abruptly notified the Scottsdale Scottsdale Research Institute that it would be closing its account last week without a clear explanation of the reasoning. A letter from the bank that was shared with Cannabis Moment on Monday says the decision was made after a careful review of your banking relationship and that the action is final and won't be reconsidered. How ridiculous, right? The SRI, so the Scottsdale Research Institute, has spent years fighting for expanded access to research-grade controlled substances to study their therapeutic potential. The kind of research we've been needing for 50 years, in part by litigating against the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, on issues such as cannabis scheduling. In May, it received preliminary approval from the agency to be one of the first new federally authorized cultivators of cannabis for research, effectively ending a decades-long monopoly on such manufacturing. The institute is already getting bids from other financial institutions that want to take on the account, so thank goodness. Obviously, competition breeds other people that are willing to shake these double standards, after Chief Investigator Sue Sisley shared the news of the Bank of America closure on social media. It's just bullshit. So highlighting, we want to expose wrongdoings of these big banks, Sisley told Marijuana Moment, adding that they want to show the public that even federally legal operations are being unfairly targeted by these large banks who refuse to look at our federal regulatory documents and just stick to the old status quo double standard. That's fine, but I do hope that if you bank with Bank of America, you consider moving to a different bank. Because why would you want to bank with an organization like this anyways that wants to stick to the status quo and flex their power instead of building trust with their clients, which is typically how things have always been done. So shame on you, Bank of America. We got to love this exposure being put out there and this awareness, as this does help the American people as we get closer to freeing the plant. Well, a bit of an update out of Germany. Again, there's no development really, but this is more, again, someone with power in Germany highlighting what they see coming. One of the strongest voices for the legalization of cannabis, the Bernau Juvenile Judge Andreas Müller, sees great chances that a possible coalition agreement between the SPD, the Greens, and the FPD will allow a controlled sale. The Greens and the FDP were in favor of legalization even before the election. The SPD is also going in this direction, and the Young Union has now also sent a corresponding signal. Mueller told the German press agency on Friday, we are on the verge of legalization. And so we love to hear that out of Germany, but what we'd love a little bit more is to see some action from the German politicians. So hope that can come soon. On to this one, worldwide cannabis sales to hit $51 billion by 2025, predicts New Frontier data. So I wanted to highlight some of the details from this report. North America holds the record for the highest amount of sales generated by selling high-THC cannabis products. According to the report, in 2020 alone, legal markets in North America made about $23 billion from only high-THC products. This amount is about 10 times larger than sales recorded by any other global regulated market. While the U.S. generated $20.3 billion combined from its adult use and medical cannabis sales, the other North American country, Canada, sold $2 billion worth of high-THC cannabis products. If both countries continue this upward trend, the $50 billion mark may come earlier than expected. We'd love to hear that. In contrast to the high sales of THC-dominant products in North America, other countries around the world had relatively lower sales in their recreational industries. In Europe, Germany has a rather flourishing medical cannabis industry that is currently the largest in the continent, and the country's made a total of $206 million from its medical cannabis program in 2020. Not going to be able to grow quickly enough if that's what it's capped at. So as much as they say it's flourishing, that ain't flourishing when you compare it to North America. While New Frontier data reports the amount was generated collectively for medical patients who are registered under insurance companies and those who purchase their medical products through other means. Cannabis legislation in Spain is akin to that of the United States, which I did not know this at all. Cannabis has not been decriminalized federally. However, states and individual provinces have the right to approve regulations on cannabis sales. Wow, interesting. These provinces allow the establishment of cannabis clubs in designated locations. While total sales made by these clubs hit $131 million in 2019. How have I not heard about this? Worth sharing anyways. Very interesting. 2 years later, Spain has the potential to own one of the largest cannabis industries in the world. Other contenders for this title are Canada and the United States. Now, this is obviously worth researching more, but again, I'm not looking to invest in Spain. Obviously, the US is where the opportunity is, but big takeaway is the rate of investment in the cannabis industry is expected to grow. Obviously, because the potential is massive. And so yesterday was obviously a very nice day to see some green after a lot of red price action, but when you get that pit in your stomach, I wanted to share this little tweet from Adam Grossman. When I look at this pit, the pit goes away. And this is again highlighting the real companies that you are investing in, US MSOs, not the stock prices. So do not let that disconnect influence you and scare you out of making a bad decision, because you are not investing in stock prices. You are investing in real companies that are executing and growing at this pace on the ground, as it is a matter of when, not if. And once that banking reform does pass, which will give safe harbor language and protection to U.S. investors, the investors in the world with the most capital, they will finally then be allowed to invest in these companies without fear of federal prosecution, and these companies will be allowed to uplist and be treated fairly like any other company on any other major U.S. exchange, and that is when we will see the valuations catch up to the stock prices. So just wanted to share that to hope keep you cool. This is from CC Invest 2 on Twitter, just in case. He does make these visuals sometimes, and he's worth following. But lastly, just wanted to end this off with the Cannabis Investor Earnings Conference Call calendar, because as we move through time, November, we can anticipate some stellar earnings from these MSOs again. So just to highlight again, November 8th, Curaleaf will be sharing theirs first. Then on November 10th, we've got Green Thumb. November 11th, Cresco Labs. November 12th, Columbia Care. November 15th, Trulieve. November 16th, Verano. And all of this is still to come. And so big week ahead, obviously, as we anticipate what is to come tomorrow. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or concerns, and I'd be happy to address them. And of course, if you can and you want to try to poke holes in the thesis, please do. But I've been trying for years, and we are very close to that tipping point, which could be tomorrow, of Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, announcing that they're going to start the descheduling and decriminalization process. So that being said, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great day, everybody.